Hey everybody, welcome to the LoveCrafts Show, where we talk about love, crafts and everything in between. My name's Mr. X Stitch.
And I'm Merion.
And this week we are joined by she's not even a triple threat. Can you be an omni threat when it comes to craft? Can you do all the crafts and be a nice person? You can if you're Christine Leech.
Absolutely. Welcome, Christine, our complete heroine.
Oh, bless you. Thank you. I mean, I can do all the crafts. Am I a nice person, though? That is the question.
Well, we've only spent short amounts of time with you, so I'm sure if we were stuck in a house with you for a fortnight, we'd have a balanced view on the subject.
Yeah, exactly. Now's the time. This is when everyone will find out if I'm a nice person or not. But luckily, I'm on my own in this weird situation, so
what could go wrong there then?
Exactly.
Yeah. Just me and the voices. It's fine.
Just me, the omni crafter. And myself.
Yeah.
I mean, if ever there was a time to teach myself crochet and knitting, now would be it. But
you already know those, right?
I know them. I can't do them. I've got like kind of junior school level on both of them. I'm just not. It's just not something that I can do for some reason. I think I've decided it's any pattern that involves numbers. And my mind just shuts down. So it's all the crochet numbers and abbreviations in the like patterns. I just
my sister's just like that. She said, "Oh, I love doing it." So she can do stripy blankets, but she doesn't like anything that involves numbers. She's convinced she's got sort of dyscalculia or something. She can't. It just throws her, makes her mind swim if there are numbers involved. But also, I mean, all the things that you do. The thing I love about all your stuff is there's such amazing instant results. Not instant, but it's quick results. So things look beautiful. There's magic involved, and then they suddenly look amazing. And I think with knitting and crochet, that just does not happen.
Yeah. I suffer greatly from impatience. I was messaging my friend earlier today just saying I'm obviously at home doing a lot more baking and cooking than I normally do, but still my meals are just not amazing. And she was like, well, you have to take time, you have to take time to your onions and do your, let everything kind of brew and stew. And I'm just like, no, I go from being not hungry to hungry so quickly that I never have the time to like do the waiting. And I think that's the same with my craft. I think I go from, oh my God, it would be amazing if you could make this, to I really need to make that now. And I don't have the patience to have a very long time in between those two things. So
have you ever bought one of those, when you go to charity shops and they, like from back in the 80s when microwaves first happened, there were like literally thousands of you can cook everything in a microwave book. Like maybe you should dive into those and explore that. That might be apparently you can do a roast dinner in a microwave, can't you?
Well, I should, but also weirdly, sort of contrary to everything I've just said, I don't own a microwave because I don't want to cook things really quickly.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to cook things slowly, fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even when I get home late from work and I just want a ready meal, it's still like a 40-minute wait in the oven. So yeah.
Nice, yeah. I'm gonna grill that like Rustler's burger or whatever they call it.
Exactly.
Yeah. You find then that if you get an idea in your head and there's an immediacy behind it, that your brain automatically latches onto certain crafts first?
Yeah, I think my go-to has been for a while has been embroidery, which has been really nice to kind of have that kind of thing back, because obviously embroidery is becoming very fashionable again, and it's really nice to kind of see the modern spin on a lot of stitching projects. I mean, obviously, Jamie, you have liked embroidery for a long time. It's never been out of fashion.
Even before it was a thing.
Even before it was a thing. You were the inventor.
Let's say that.
And I think I have kind of not fads, but like when I was doing my pom-pom book, literally everything I looked at, my first thought was like, how do I turn that into a pom-pom? Which is why there's weird things like sushi and licorice all sorts and stuff in the book.
Let me just say that if anybody wants to find that book, it's called Pom Pom Mania, and it's absolutely fantastic book with all sorts of extraordinary pom-pom projects in it. I mean, you can turn anything into a pom-pom. You can.
Yes. I mean,
have you found anything that you can't turn into a pom-pom?
I've seen online people have done like the whole alphabet, and I've tried various letters from that, and some you can do and some just no.
But other than those, literally the world.
Other than those, literally the world. Well, the world's really easy, obviously, because it's just a sphere.
Last week we were talking about children and craft and what kids like doing best and stuff like that. When you were little, can you tell us from the beginning? I mean, I know I was very much a maker right from the off.
I've got my hand up here because I've got a very particular question, right, if that's all right.
Barge in, why don't you?
Sorry, but I want to find out in that case about the prize-winning hemmed handkerchief from the Ringmere Village Flower and Produce Show.
So I come from a very crafty family. My nan used to work in a factory sewing all the sort of like cricket pads and various kind of things for Schlesinger. So kind of quite intricate and quite hardcore embroidery sewing projects. And then my aunt had her own kind of like fashion line making house coats and dressing gowns. And then I think they just taught my mum and my aunt, and then my mum just taught us, and it's pretty much making stuff and playing with Lego are like the two things that I remember doing for most of my childhood. Yeah, so every year there was the Ringmere Flower Show, and they always had like a little kids craft categories, and my sister and I used to enter them all the time every year. And the hemmed handkerchief was, I think, my first prize.
That's what I heard. And how old were you?
Well, it does change occasionally. I feel I was 5, and then sometimes I go and look at the newspaper clipping, and then I add up dates, and then maybe I'm 6. But
maybe I'm 12. Yeah,
I'm 12. I mean, that's still pretty amazing, isn't it, that you had those motor skills at that young age?
Yeah, and I really remember, I guess it must have been the autumn flower show. There was 2. There was like a spring one and an autumn one. And I remember in the summer holiday, going on holiday in Margate, and I really remember really clearly sitting with my nan and her showing me how to do the hemming and her making me unpick it and redo it. And
so you can't even pretend that somebody else did it, like this is you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it was a slave driver kind of unpick it. But I do really, really remember doing it.
I think older craftswomen always look at young children and think, oh yes, you're going to carry this forward into the new world.
Yeah,
because you do always want to identify people that are going to carry on your craft.
Yeah, true.
So, at what point did you realise that? Then did you sort of think, right, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life as a job, or did you go in a different, this is the moment when you say, no, actually, I decided I want to be a welder. At some point later on, I thought, no, I'm going to make pom-poms.
I was always really crafty and very artistic, and my family were very generous in allowing us to kind of do whatever we wanted. So I wasn't kind of forced to do things that I didn't want to do. Basically, I went and studied illustration at college, and having graduated from that, it didn't take long to realise that it was quite hard to actually make a career as a freelance illustrator. So I kind of had to change my tack a little bit and self-taught and picked up on a more of the graphic design side of stuff that I had learned at college. And then I was able to use that to go into working for like women's magazines and stuff.
But I mean, I've seen some of the things you've done. I mean, do you remember when, it wasn't that long ago, when you went to Heels and you did, which is a department store in London, where you just did confetti everywhere. I mean, you had a bit of a confetti crush for a while. That was something just by sticking, strategically sticking, coloured paper on things. And that was brilliant.
Thank you. That was something that it's one of those things that I think all creatives need to kind of try and remember. There was very much a case of that keep it simple, stupid kind of vibe, because they'd asked me to come up with a design for a window for Heels. So a furniture shop, lots of different types of furniture in the window, but using this kind of amazing thick washi tape that's called Haru tape, that's perfect for decorating spaces, because it's like a brightly coloured tape, but it doesn't damage the windows or the furniture or the walls or anything. So it was really good for like temporary installations. And I'd come up with like this incredible idea, like, because I was like, oh my God, it's a window in heels, like in the middle of London, it's got to be incredible. And I'd come up with this amazing idea, making all these like fake flowers out of this tape and kind of doing all this really intricate kind of decoration. And then they sort of came back to me and were like, oh no, that's not really what we want. It's not very heels. Have you got anything else? And then I was like, oh, well, I can just cut the tape up into rectangles and stick it everywhere and it'll look like confetti. And they're like, oh yeah, that's brilliant. And I was like, yeah, but that only took me 4 minutes to think about. Like, it can't be good enough if it didn't take me very long to think about. And I think that's something that the more I kind of do projects like that, the more you sort of realise that you don't necessarily have to spend ages thinking about something, and quite often your first idea is your right idea.
You've got to have the nerve to go with that, though, haven't you? That moment of like instant creativity, you've got to have the nerve to not then edit it after the fact, right?
Yeah. But do you know, it's so interesting, because last week when we were talking about kids and stuff, we were saying that as parents, you have to be able to let your children sort of run free on the craft and art things and not be too prescriptive, in order to give them the confidence to sort of validate their ideas, which is extremely hard for parents. So like, full marks to your parents for letting you decorate your room. Actually, my mum was very much like that. But I think that's what gives people the confidence to know that something that they've dreamt up is worth something fabulous. Won't it be so interesting, you know, in 20 years' time to look at like the kids of Corona? So, you know, just to sort of see how they came out, to see whether
like we're the kids of America.
Yes, exactly.
If I could sing, I would start singing that song, but I can't, so I won't.
And we'd all want a stripy T-shirt. Do you remember she had a stripy T-shirt? She came wild.
Yeah.
She was singing that.
But there is something you don't, you know, I've got a 3-year-old, so obviously it's not like quite the same as having an 8-year-old, but I don't go, oh, let's do some maths. Like, I feel like you want that playfulness, don't you? Because actually, if you want somebody to hold on to something for a while, so you being able to decorate your room makes that room your universe and makes you more inclined to be in there, rather than it being your parents' version of
And also, I think the fact that your parents are just like, yeah, do it, and then probably were like, oh, that's fabulous, it's really cool. That validation and that sort of does wonders for your artistic self-esteem too, doesn't it? Because it makes it really valuable and a real thing.
Yeah.
And
I was just always surrounded with, and I think I'm quite fortunate because I've got kind of half and half. So my dad kind of extended our house, and he kind of did it all by himself with the help of like the Reader's Digest DIY encyclopedia. And then my mum, it was always like, well, if you want a new school skirt, or you want some new school trousers, then we'll buy the fabric and we'll make them, kind of thing. So it was just, we were just a very hands-on family. And I think that's why I'm not really afraid of anything when it comes to making stuff, because how hard can it be?
It's also, it's familiar, really, and it's hard. Like, it's triple in your DNA as well, isn't it? It's like, you know, that runs through your fibre of being.
Yeah. I mean, don't ask me to do my tax return or
or cook something slowly.
Or anything.
I'm firmly of the belief that everybody is put on this earth for a reason, and for some people they are going to be like the best lollipop person on the planet because that's what they're meant to do, and that it's just the trick of trying enough stuff to find out what it is that you're good at. I mean, with it's clear it was just like the whole of craft. So that made it quite easy, I guess. I wonder whether as well you get people where there's a real strong craft thing, but then the modern world gets in the way. Because as you said, there's a certain amount of rarity to the fact that your family remained, let's make clothes rather than let's buy clothes. And, you know, didn't fall down in the face of like the ease of consumerism and stuff. It's nice that you were given that space. Yeah,
definitely. And I think it was always shown that it was enjoyable as well. So I think it wasn't kind of forced upon us from necessity. It was just like, this is a nice thing to do, it's a good pastime, it's also beneficial for the purse strings and stuff.
That's a risk, isn't it, when it's like, let's make our own curtains. You can be like, oh, I've got to make my own curtains, or you can go, let's make our own curtains, everybody.
Yeah, I think that's very true of socks, actually. I know.
Every episode, Merion will find a way to allude to socks.
Excellent. I like this.
You know the Arctic melting ice caps in the Arctic. It's a lot to do with socks.
Can't help it. I'm just a bit sock obsessed. But do you know that? I mean, I think it's because socks have come to me rather late in my crafting.
She had a very barefoot child.
I was going to say.
Don't get me started on bamboo socks from TK Maxx, man. I go through those in about a week. Don't get me started.
Okay, I won't.
If you like LoveCrafts, you're going to love our show. So just subscribe now. Get it over and done with. I love it. It's the LoveCrafts Show. It's the LoveCrafts Show. Oh my God, we love to craft. It's the LoveCrafts Show.
Oh, there you go. There it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
We haven't even started on the proper singing yet, have we?
So, in terms of let's switch around slightly to crafting in terms of the earth. I wanted to ask you about the inspiration behind your chandeliers at the Bath Christmas market, which were made of plastic bottles. How do you make a flower out of a plastic bottle?
Well, that was a really fun project to work on, but it gave me kind of emotional turmoil because processes to make flowers out of plastic bottles do involve cutting up the plastic, melting the edges with a candle, and then kind of spraying with paint. And then you're sort of like, so for all the good I'm doing for using up these bottles, am I then undoing it by using spray paint and stuff? But then I talked to the people at, do you know Make Something? It's like the Greenpeace's arm of like creative sustainability craft arm. And I sort of talked to them about it, and they were like, you're turning something that would just get thrown away into a beautiful piece of art. You're giving it a second life. So for every piece of something that you can give a second life to, then you're keeping it out of landfill and you're keeping it out of the oceans for a while longer, basically.
Can you describe these? I'm not aware of this, Sandy. Describe.
Yeah, so Bath Council asked me to come up with some ideas of what we could do to decorate the Bath Christmas market area. They sort of said they need to be weatherproof, outdoors, colourful, able to have children help make them. And I came up with this idea for like this wreath. Like I made like a dummy wreath, like it was about 0.5 metre round, and I made some pom-poms out of plastic bags, because my default is, if anyone asks me to do any sort of decoration, I'm like, can I do it in pom-poms? And I was like, I could do it in pom-poms, but if it's going to be outside in December, yarn is going to get soggy, it's going to droop, so what else could I use?
Are they called plom-poms?
Plom-ploms, they are now.
Because you get plan, don't you? So I feel like that's a natural.
Yeah. So I was just like, well, we can use plastic. And I was like, well, I can't buy new plastic, so what could we use? And I was like, well, we could use plastic bags. And then that kind of just sent me off on this kind of thinking about all the other things that you could use and how you could start involving the local community of Bath to like provide the materials. So they had sort of like a plastic bag amnesty where you could bring all your plastic bags to the workshop that I was working in so that I could use them. And they started collecting all the plastic bottles from around and about. And yeah, so basically we made plastic bags into pom-poms. We made the kind of tops of plastic bottles into flowers, and we made the bases of plastic bottles into snowflakes.
I just wanted to mention before we carry on with this conversation, I was out with my dog yesterday evening, and it was one of those balmy evenings because the weather's been surprisingly good of late. And we were walking across the field and I noticed a murmuration. What bird is it? Starlings.
Starling.
Yeah, swooping. It wasn't the biggest one I'd ever seen, but it was really quite engaging. And I watched it for a while, and you could hear, it was quite a quiet evening, a couple of sheep in the distance. And the strangest thing was that the murmuration, you start to see things when they're moving, don't you? And I was sort of watching it, and at one point, I swear, it just said, "Subscribe to the LoveCrafts Show."
Because it's always been popular with starlings.
It's a sign, I think. Amazing. And I just thought, well, if ever there was a sign that people should either on iTunes or just, follow a link on Spotify, then now's the time to do it.
On Instagram, I mean, you've got a gorgeous grid on Instagram, and all these great stories, and so lots of sort of make-alongs. And I spotted the other day the Pom Pom Club, and
Pom Pom News.
Pom Pom News, that's it. And also the lovely, like when you sew things, and like you were making a jacket and a dress. It's just gorgeous. What are you doing in the future? How are you coping with inspiring people in isolation and giving them little crafts to do? What can we do?
Okay, so Pom Pom News is quite random and started because basically I was lucky enough that just before lockdown started, I was commissioned to write a book. So the book's about sort of gift wrap and kind of zero waste gift wrapping.
Zero waste gift wrap. I want to say the words furoshiki is what I want to say.
You could say the word furoshiki for sure. So that's the Japanese art of gift wrapping with fabric and tying knots and things. And so I was commissioned to write this book, and they wanted it for Christmas 2021. And then I was like, oh no, it can't. That's too late. It needs to be out for Christmas 2020. And they were like, well, that means that it has to be delivered by May. And I was like, oh, that's fine, because I can write it. I was like, that's fine. I can write it. I can make it. I can design it. So I was like, I can do all of that. So basically I can just present you with a book. And then we were going to get a photographer to come along. But then obviously lockdown happened and the photographer couldn't come. So then I've had to sort of brush up on my GCSE photography and learn how to photograph. I had a big sort out of the studio, and I cleared my desk and I moved it around and started doing these kind of like general chats to camera about Pom Pom News and what the hot craft topic was that day in my house. When you live on your own, you've got no one to talk to, as you may be witnessing from this podcast. The amount of chat that I'm coming out with.
As we enter hour 5 of the
show. It's just quite nice to talk to people. So I've just sort of been sharing sort of ideas on Pom Pom News, but now I'm starting to share and champion other people's makes and things that they've been working on, and kind of get people involved and showing me what they've been making and kind of maybe suggesting things that they could make. And I do these workshops with LoveCrafts, and they've been physical workshops in your lovely offices. But obviously, because of lockdown, we've had to stop those workshops, but we were trying to find a way of turning them to be online workshops. So the last one that we had in March was to be a pom pom wreath workshop, which we successfully transformed into like an online workshop, which was really good. So I had these lovely 2 evenings, 12 ladies all on Zoom having this really enjoyable evening. I was sort of showing them how to make different pom-poms and how to prepare the wreath and stuff, and then they were going away for the week making all their pom-poms, and then they came back the week later and I kind of showed them how to construct it all, and it worked really, really well.
We should say to our lovely listeners to keep an eye on the Instagram and website for all the details of these beautiful letters. I can't tell you how gorgeous they are, everybody. If we can find any pictures, we will pop them on the LoveCrafts page about this show.
That would be lovely.
Because they are just beautiful.
I think that's one of the things that's most frustrating about you is, you get a lot of times, like you're into your pom-poms and it's like you really tackle that. But I've got your Felt So Good book.
Oh, yeah.
Like, all the stuff in that's blooming lovely. Like pretty much all of the things that you put your mind to turn out to be really darn nice. You don't fumble the ball as far as I'm aware.
Thank you. Maybe I just stick to the things I know I can do.
I did have little so-and-so that I did. I think we did a review of that and a giveaway, which isn't a slur. But it's like, we have a thing, whenever I get a review book or whenever my editor on my website gets one, we're like, if you like the book, keep the book. If you don't like the book, give it away. But that's not a slur on yours. But like
don't
for
worry,
me, like
I understand.
I've moved house twice since that book came out, so there's no way it was going to end up still in my office.
Yeah,
I haven't got anything in my office. There are so many shows about crafts, but there's only one show about LoveCrafts.
perfect.
It's like having your friends round for a cup of tea and a bit of stitching, only we're on a laptop.
Yes, it is. That's exactly what it's like.
And you don't know us. It's like having acquaintance. we will be your friends. Let us show you why we love craft.
Crafts.
You know, when you spend all the hours of the day looking at yarn, you do kind of get to know close up what they look like. I don't think I'd be so good now, but certainly at those times I was a bit of a yarn nerd.
One day we'll test that. We'll just like dig out some Pinterest boards, have a fast round. How many yarns can you identify in a minute?
Name that brand. Yeah. But now there are so many. There are so many merinos and so many alpacas. I mean, in the old days, you could sort of look at something and you'd know that the halo that was coming off a yarn was an alpaca halo or a mohair halo, and you can tell. But I don't know that I'd be able to tell these days. There's so many. Ooh,
I didn't even know that wool had a halo. So
I know.
I'm just nodding at this point.
I mean, this is what we need for this lockdown.
Honestly,
we need Merion to set us a quiz.
I feel like a stronger person knowing that I can talk about the additional loft you gain from using
exactly.
It's just like complete nerdery, isn't it?
It's amazing.
It is.
Would that be your specialist subject if you were to go on Mastermind?
I think so. I think it could be fibres.
I'm going to interject now because I've got some questions.
Go on, I love Jamie's
It's about
questions.
that time when I've got some questions. So we're going to have to do another show, right? Because I've got at least 2 topics to talk about that we haven't talked about already. And one of them was the time I beat you in a competition.
Oh, rude.
Because that's
rude.
literally...
Because you just had a child.
Because I just had a child. Let's just do it. Right, so Handmade Fair 2017.
Yeah.
And they used to do a thing, Molly Makes would do a Molly Makes mashup. So it was like on stage craft competition, a person versus a person. But ours was like a proper competition. And the thing was, is that all things being even, you would have wiped the floor with me.
I don't think so.
No, come on, you would have done, because actually I remember what I did. And it was, I learned a couple of lessons, which is if you're going to do a thing on stage, it doesn't have to look good up close. It has to look like all right from a distance.
Yeah.
So, detail becomes largely irrelevant. But the biggest thing I learned is if you're going up in a competition against Christine Leech off of So Yeah, Kath, the editor of Molly Makes, like, so how are you, Jamie? And I was like, I'm really great. I had a daughter 3 weeks ago and it's changed my life. And that pretty much won me the competition. Like I could have literally done nothing at that point. That was all it took. But this isn't really a question. This is just a talking point. I know in 2012, you met a guy called Charles Burns, who's known as the Silhouettist. Who does those, like, I've met him as well. And I think he's got a superpower or something, because he can like stand at you. He makes silhouettes. He cuts silhouettes out of paper, and he's astonishingly good. He like genuinely is. He did one of me, and basically he just stands there with a piece of paper, like moving the paper, cutting his scissors, chatting to you or whatever, presents you with an absolutely perfect portrait of yourself in silhouette.
How do you know that I've met him though?
I research. I do research.
Disturbing.
Every week, Christine, every week he does this. Every week he comes up with really random things about people. I don't know how he does it. He's Google Meister.
You've had 9 books out, and I think you've had 9 books in like 4. They've been translated as well into different languages.
Yeah.
That's
lots
groovy.
of different. Yeah, Russian is our most exciting.
I just wondered what your tips would be for craft people who feel like they've got a book in them. Because I've had people ask me that. I've done 2 books, and they're like, what do you do to get a book? And I'm like, well, you sit around for long enough and eventually someone asks. Eventually. But you've had quite a few. So I wonder if you've got any tips for people who might be feeling so inclined.
I think I was fortunate that I've got my design background, that we could present something that kind of looked already like a fully formed book. Because I used to work at a publisher's, so I sort of know that when you go to book fairs and stuff, you have a thing called a blad, which like a sort of 16-page mock-up of the book. So we had a couple of craft projects and stuff. And when we did our first book, we kind of made 4 of the projects, photographed them, wrote them, and I designed it. So we kind of just sent that to the publishers and was like, this is what the book could look like. So I think that definitely gave us a head start. But when I pitched my other books, I wrote all the projects that I was going to do. So I'd come up with 30 ideas for projects. I'd do a mood board for each project with my own work and pictures from Pinterest and stuff. And I'd kind of knock up like a quick cover. I'd have some thoughts for cover titles and stuff, and I'd kind of knock up a quick cover of what it would look like.
Yeah, I suppose that makes sense as well, isn't it? Because if you've got a personal aesthetic, then you want to convey that to book publishers, don't you? You don't want to go, here's an idea, and then they've got to get creative on your behalf. Yeah. You want to take the strain away from them, right?
I think so. I think you kind of want to make it as easy as possible for them to say yes. So you want to be able to give them as much as you can. I mean, that's how I work now, and that's what I say to anybody who wants to thinking about putting a book together, is try and do it as visually as possible.
Because I know that Merion's got that book. You're working on that book, Socks and Dogs and Sausage Rolls, right? It's a tell-all, isn't it?
For me, it's all about the words. It's always all about the words.
Yeah, see.
And so I'm great on the words. I think the visual stuff is harder.
So you've got a book coming out, which apparently is coming out this Christmas, Zero Waste Gift Wrapping.
Yeah.
Yeah, in which you talk about things such as furoshiki, the Japanese art of wrapping things in fabric.
Yeah,
you love that, don't you?
I do. My personal favourite form of furoshiki is the bin tsutsumi, which is used for wrapping bottles. And there's a technique within which you can wrap 2 bottles together with the same piece of fabric to be carried around.
Yes.
What's your favourite form of furoshiki?
So basically, it's half. The beginning half of the book is the kind of knots section, but then we go a lot deeper, and it has weirdly been really beneficial to be in this lockdown. So the second half of the book is all about gift wraps and pouches and bags and sleeves and things from existing pieces of either existing fabric that you've got or articles of clothing and stuff, because it's all about the upcycle and trying to keep things out of landfill for as long as you can. And there was kind of a statistic that even a really high percentage of clothes that go to charity shops still end up in landfill at some point.
I'm really looking forward to this book. I think we need this.
Oh, good.
It is awful, the amount of wrapping paper that we rip to shreds.
Yeah.
Just no reason at all.
I know, it's scary.
I've got one final question. This one's a biggie. Ready? I want to know, what was the last good thing that you thinged? Right, so to give you context here, the last good bug that I caught was a bee fly. It turns out that it's a fly, but because it's kind of fuzzy and a bit brown and yellow, everyone thinks it's a bee. It's got a really long nose. I thought it was deadly. Turns out it's great for, like, flower pollinator, just pollinates. Abandoned.
Bee fly. Well, if anybody knows about a bee fly, please email us on show@lovecrafts.com
very good.
And tell us all about the bee flies, because we don't know much about those.
Yeah.
The last good thing that I think was this morning when I realised that my daily exercise doesn't have to just be a walk, and I went for a cycle to was like a mill pond. It was incredible. That was nice.
Yeah, it seemed like a thing to me. That's what the beauty of my question, you see. Last good thing, I think, can be...
It can be anything.
I think.
Well, I'm ecstatic. I'm always thrilled by all your craft things. I think they're very exciting. And I didn't even get to ask you about what I spotted on your website, which is the fact that you went ranch riding on holiday. I just want to know all about it. I have to ask you about that another day.
I've got more questions as well. We're going to have.
I can talk to you about that for
hours.
So it's definitely incredible. That brings us to the end of another episode of the LoveCrafts Show, where I think we've talked about love and crafts and everything in between. And so, in closing, my name is Mr. Xstitch,
and I'm Merion.
And I know your eyes in the morning sun. I feel you touch me in the pouring rain, and the moment that you wander far from me, I want to feel you in my arms again. And you come to me on a summer breeze, keep me warm in your love, then you softly leave. Exactly. And it's me you need to show. How deep is your lovecraft? Thank you very much, everybody.
Very
Good night.
nice. Thank you, Christine.
Oh, thank you. It's been lovely to talk to you.